Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you to break down almost all the action in the British Basketball League this week. We're recording this before Manchester take on London. It's our little Steve Bray moment. We're having a little protest and saying 8 o'clock on a Sunday night is too late. I think we'll be about as effective as he was in protest, but we'll if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything, eh, Dave?
I agree with that absolutely. Yeah, there is a time and there is a place, and the flag is now firmly being planted.
So let's look back over the action then of this last week of the regular season, going back to Wednesday night when we were recording London Lions against. We were recording whilst London Lions were playing Surrey Scorchers, and I turned on. It was about 23-16. I think what we missed was the Dean Wanless show, because Dean Wanless scored the first 13 points of the game for Surrey. It didn't last for very long for the Scorchers. A couple of Reese threes took it out to 12, and it was reasonably comfortable after that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Dean's career average is, but I'm probably guessing it's not much more than maybe 2 or 3 a game. So credit to him for going for 13 and at least coming out ready to play. I think I texted you during this one, which said that it was making my eyes hurt.
You did.
You know, and I got as far as about 3 minutes before halftime. It's just tough. I mean, Surrey are past the point of no return that they were about 3 weeks ago, but they're also past the point of no return with a team bench that looks like a hospital ward, you know. I'm assuming that they're all injured and they're not just saving themselves for next year. And then so they're left with, you know, the remnants of a team, not you know. And London, who've never been short of having players this year, albeit some have come and some have gone and some have gone around in circles, whatever. Always we're going to have too much for Surrey. Kaboza came up big-ish in the game with 20 points, made some threes, which is very important for his development. He's not the finished article, but he's showing a degree of promise. I think he had 20 points in this game. But outside of that, London's in the playoffs. Surrey is waiting for next year and probably recruiting already. They should be if they're not. And so goes the game.
Indeed. Lions had an 11-0 run with Kajini having 7 of them. It was 45-31. It was never in single figures after that. Dave is getting his London Lions games up because Kaboza had 20 in the next game. Kajini...
I'm sorry. No wonder you were looking at it like that.
Kajini had...
I paid to it. Sorry.
Yeah. Kajini had 18 and 6. Reese had 18. Taria had 14 and 7. Teo had 19 and 6 for Surrey. Dean Wanless with his career best in points, rebounds index, 17-9-24 index rating.
Just add that if I am perceived by anybody to be mailing this in, it's only because I've watched so many players doing exactly the same.
I thought you weren't getting into personal shots today, Dave.
No, that's not personal. That's a group shot.
Group shot.
Nobody in particular.
Yeah. So let's get on to the game where Bradley Kaboza, as plugged, scored 20 points. London Lions 99, Cheshire Phoenix 62 on Friday night. No Josh Ward-Hibbert, obviously no Justin, still no Dirk, and no Dickerson for Cheshire. Lions sowed the seeds early on this one. Kajini and Reese hitting threes. They were quickly out to a 20-9 lead, and basically this game was over in the middle of the second quarter. They were up 18.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you realize I was just testing your editing skills. Yeah, okay, yeah, it was. I mean, there's an interesting, if you're really interested, and I have to say at this point of the season, I'm not, because most of the teams are what they are, and the games that matter are coming up next week, not last week. But the interesting kind of subplot is, you know, Lions guard position, because, you know, Reese is going to play, but Dirk's been hurt. Justin is out. So that leaves you basically with, you know, Andre Lockhart, Lorenzo Kajini, and Bradley Kaboza. And Lockhart's not playing much, and Kajini is kind of a 3 as much as a 2, which means that there is actually an opportunity for the young lad to play. How that will all pan out when Dirk comes back is another question, and what that rotation will be, because, you know, you can lose a playoff game in 5 minutes. and that lineups, you hear it's a truism in the NBA, that the lineups become shorter in the playoffs, but generally they do in the BBL as well. Because as a coach, you're playing with the end of your season, and you're really going to go with everybody, players that you trust, in a development situation at all. But they're in that situation whereby he may have to play a big minute, or he may have to play significant minutes at significant times. So as I was saying so concisely and previously, making a few threes is really quite important for their development, because they can't be in a situation in the playoffs like they were last week, whereby basically 5 guys are guarding Isaiah Reese. That is not going to get them through a 2-legged series. Somebody else is going to have to step up and make plays, and the spacing is going to have to be there. In theory, teams should defend better in the playoffs. They know the team. They should be scouting them absolutely to point. It doesn't always work like that. I'm not overly convinced, having seen some of the defensive schemes this season, that teams are absolutely where I would like them to be in relation to that. We'll see if it changes in the playoffs. But nevertheless, he has to be able to shoot the ball in that system with Reese as a number creator. You can't have a 2-guard who's not willing to shoot the ball. So the fact that he made some shots is important. In relation to Cheshire, we talked a little bit about, they're having that post-trophy blip, and they're in the playoffs. They've accomplished absolutely probably everything that they sought to accomplish at Christmas, which would be win the trophy and get in the playoffs. And going down into London on a Friday night with a limited roster, which they have got effectively. The seventh man is being split between Robbie Graham and Radwan Bakali, and neither of those two were playing 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's now the 7th man. And that is going to lead to some difficulties, I think, particularly in a game which they don't have to win. So this was a game whereby London overpowered them with the shooting and just with their bodies. And I don't think Ben was particularly impressed with Cheshire's effort, to be honest. But those things happen. This is why, we play all these games at the end of the season. You're going to get situations where a team doesn't show their best side.
Reese had 26 and 7. He shot 10 of 14 for the floor, which was pretty impressive, particularly on the back of that game in Sheffield last week. Kabosi, you said 4 of 5 from 3-point range, 20 points. 5, yeah. Lions were 16 of 30 from behind the arc in total. Austin led the Knicks with 15 and 10. Chirobi had 13. So let's go to the Sky Sports game on Friday night, a game the Eagles had to win, and win they did, 93-80 over the Glasgow Rocks. Pretty even start. You got Person and Gordon hitting shots, Fletcher pulling the strings, Murray hitting threes at the other end, 22-22 after 6.5 minutes. Dave, I'm sure you were loving it, all this offensive firepower in the first 6 minutes.
If anybody wants to find out if I was loving it, go and review the game on the baby up there.
Indeed,
and hear it word for word. Firstly, the 3 shots Gareth Murray made, I don't think I've ever seen 3 cleaner threes in the most.
Yeah.
Literally back rim and down, didn't hit the rim. I would like to say both teams came to play. I think Newcastle basically did, albeit I think they broke down a bit defensively in the first quarter. I don't think Glasgow really came to play. I think Gareth came to play. I think the rest of them, particularly the Americans, who it's the first year, were of the view, knew that they were in the playoffs. And there's a prioritization of games gone on. And I didn't think they didn't not try, but I didn't think they were, to use the ubiquitous phrase, locked in early on. And I thought if Gareth hadn't made those shots, it could have been quite a significant early lead for Newcastle. And Newcastle's offense looked quite smooth, but we all know what Glasgow's defense is like. So, again, there's kind of a fool's gold thing in that as well. The game turned in the second quarter. The game was a second quarter game because Newcastle were able to get some stops. They were able to win the quarter without Fletcher on the court. And Glasgow, and this is where I thought it particularly showed that some of Glasgow's Americans weren't quite there. Hillsman was going into the lane and chucking up like 15-foot floaters. They're not shots he shoots regularly.
No.
You know, the shots that the defense was giving them, and that's right, that's good for the Eagles, but they're not the shots that he generally shoots up. Harris was non-existent in the first half. He just wasn't there. You know, he didn't have any impact on the game at all. Jordan Johnson made a couple of plays, but again, you felt that he was playing within himself to a certain degree after that first kind of 5 or 6 minute burst. And probably for the only time, one of the only times this season, they were actually stifled. An Eagles defensive unit actually stifled an opposition team. And whilst Newcastle weren't particularly offensively fluent, what they did do was something which I think I was calling for about a month ago, which was when Fletcher wasn't on the court, throw the ball at Defoe in the post. And Defoe not only scored, but he also, I think, had 3 or 4 assists out the post.
Yeah,
and it was like watching, it was like watching Drew Sullivan at Leicester or Kieran when he was playing at Glasgow. Those guys, you become a facilitator from the post, because really neither person nor Johnson nor anybody else on the Eagles team has really shown the ability to be a regular facilitator off the dribble. So you've got to find it a different way, and Defoe's probably the second best passer. So they got some scores off that, which helped.
It didn't matter in hindsight, but I just thought with 3 minutes to go, they were up, I can't remember, I think it was about 13 points. And I know Fletcher was on the bench on 2 fouls, but I just thought at that stage, maybe bring him back into the game, last 3 minutes of the quarter, land the knockout blow, get up 20, 22 points and make life easy in the second half. I don't know what you think.
I mean, my preference is always to let these guys play. And I understand in this situation, because it was working, why change it? I think I'd have had him in at the 5 minute mark, because, ultimately I'm going to lose. If he comes in, fouls out and gets a third foul, I'm going to lose that 5 minutes anyway. But I prefer not to lose that 5 minutes without even trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the other line which is working, so you can kind of understand kind of rolling with it. We did have something of a mind meld, because I obviously egotistically decided I wanted to watch the commentary back to see how it should be done. And with about a minute to go, if people synchronize, I think you'll find that almost to the second, we were talking about how if this is a 5-0 run to Newcastle, it's up 16. If it's a 5-0 run to Glasgow, it's down 7. Literally to the second. So I think, we are melding into one here.
Indeed.
The commentator's
like
becoming opinionated, and the opinionated so-and-so is becoming the commentator, and it's all kind of mind-merging. But no, I mean, I wouldn't. The problem with sitting someone like him down for the whole second quarter is that you don't know if he's going to be ready and be in the third quarter, because you've got to get back into the flow of the game. That applies to anybody. But that's just me. At the end of the day, they were up 13, so they got away with it. If that's one way it looked, or alternatively, it worked. So and then he saved for the beginning of the third quarter. The third quarter, again, Glasgow just weren't quite where they needed to be, I thought. And again, I'm going to put it down to urgency, the urgency of the game. Not that they weren't trying, but not just that the attention to detail wasn't there. I think Gareth said afterwards the defense wasn't there. Their offense wasn't actually as good as it has been. They didn't necessarily make that many shots. And I thought Newcastle just about made enough plays. Pearson made a couple of threes to kind of take it out and to keep it there. Then from memory, Fletcher picked up a third foul. I certainly wouldn't have took him out at that point, but took him out with 2 minutes to go, kept him on the bench at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And I thought the beginning of the fourth quarter was where Glasgow blew their chance in this game. You know what the scores were, you can probably tell us.
Well, all I've got here is they got to 20 midway through the fourth quarter, but that's obviously the point at which you're saying leading up to. And then Rocks had an 11-0 run, but they always had a double figure cushion. If that 11-0 run had come from 16 down.
But I thought it should have, because the beginning of the fourth quarter, I thought, and this has happened, again, watching all these games, it gives you, I don't know if you find the same, but you begin to see a rhythm and a pattern in each of the games, and across the teams, and not just pattern for one team's games to another, but a pattern with all the teams, and certain things that happen. And other than the last 2 minutes of a close game, the rhythm I've the pattern I've noted over probably the entirety of the season is that the most important minutes in the game are the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. And I know that's like a bit like, you know, the cricket match where the commentator saying this is the next session's the most important. It's always the most important. Doesn't mean anything. But if you looked at it on the round at the end of the game, looking back, where was the game? Where did the game turn? Where was it won? Most games are close enough going into the fourth quarter that the fourth quarter is still relevant, right? That doesn't apply to games with 6 minutes to go. Now that game, Newcastle were up 13 or 14 at the end of the third, right? They came out of the fourth and couldn't get a shot. Glasgow blew about 3 layups. Jordan Johnson went down there, and I think Fletcher and Gordon were on the bench to come in from the 9-minute mark, and they didn't get in until the 7 minute
they didn't
mark.
get in for 2 minutes,
right? And that was 3 minutes. My thought was Newcastle are fragile here, and Glasgow didn't take advantage. So when eventually, because I think at that point you've sat Fletcher another 5 minutes from this 2 minute mark to the 7 minute mark. He's already sat the whole second quarter. So his rhythm is not there at all, what he's used to doing. So eventually when they came back in, Newcastle's energy had just dropped, but Glasgow were too late in making the run that you talk about, because they hadn't picked up on the opportunities at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And also, and as such, the jeopardy in the game was never significant enough for Newcastle to probably crack. That's because that's the difference with it being 12 as it to being making you run to get it down to 12 as to making you run to get it down to 3 or 4.
You
know, and so I think Newcastle did play a good defense at times. You know, the second quarter hold the team at 12 points has hardly happened this year. But I put that down a little bit to the players that Newcastle had on court, also a little bit to the mentality of Glasgow. I don't think Glasgow were totally locked into that game.
No,
and overall, it made for a good finish to the season, though.
It did. Yeah, definitely. Gordon led the Eagles with 21. Peel, 8 of 9 shooting for 17 points. Defoe, 16. This game was actually restarted afterwards because there was some issues with the first one. So Fletcher actually ended up with 11 points and 11 assists. He only had 10. He only had 10 in real time. And of course, I was sat there going, if he gets to 11 assists, he will move past Alton Bird for career assists per game. And he did very briefly. So I'll pick that up a bit later. Murray, 3 of 6. So he made those first threes and didn't make any after that. 19 points. Hillsman, 15. Harris, 15. I think they were all in the second half, Harris's points. And Johnson, 14 points and 17 assists he ended up with. And that confirmed the Rocks in 7th place, and the Knicks in 6th.
Giving them a nice game against Sheffield, who we'll get to in a minute. Who beat in the last second tip in last week.
Indeed. Well, let's get right to Sheffield now. Sheffield Sharks 91, Manchester Giants 86. Armstrong back for the Giants. I was watching this one back. I think it was this morning. I found this a bit of a tough watch in the beginning.
I watched it this morning as well.
Really score.
I only kind of because I wanted to kind of work out how it was Manchester got 20 up and how it was Sheffield came back.
Well, my take on that was Manchester got up 20 because they got to the basket super easy, made a couple of threes and went on a 19-1 run, and that was the 25-7 the league got up, as you say, to I think it was 21. It was the peak. Or 19 it might have been.
And then it came back in about 4 minutes, and most of it did. When Manchester's bench came in, I'm afraid. And Dan Clark sat down.
Glasgow, Montgomery, hit threes, Nichols and 1 to start their second quarter, and it's 24-31.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you know, Sharks have the same thing going without Johnson now. It's like 3 games in a row that Montgomery's played some minutes. And he's a kid who's been around for a while. You know, he used to play we used to play Sharks in pre-season quite regularly, and he would come off the bench and he could shoot and he could handle, a bit undersized. But you know, I don't know if he'll be in the playoff rotation, but he's certainly been in the recent rotation because you know Wallace has been hurt and Johnson's not obviously available anymore. He made 1 3 in this game, which I think is important. I think if I'd been Manchester, I would have challenged him to shoot a few more. And what I mean by that is, if you see somebody, particularly in a game like this where both teams are in the playoffs, you see somebody on the court who you're not sure if he's ready to make an impact. He's hardly played any minutes this season. You kind of use that as an opportunity to play centre field against him and play 5-on-4, make the opposition throw him the ball and see if he can knock down a few. And if he knocks down a few, you hold your hands up and you go out and guard him. And if he doesn't, well, he's not either not going to be in the game much more, or they're not going to score because you've got the extra defender in the paint. And I thought McKnight just kind of guarded him like he was anybody else, and which is respectful. I get that, but it might not be the best way of maximising an advantage in a game. That said, the first shot he took, he knocked it down. So, credit to him. But you would always want to challenge players who haven't played and say, look, if you're on the court, you're going to be the one that has to beat us. I'm not just going to let you play your 6-7 minutes and move the ball around and be a kind of a hub on the team and help the team out. We're going to make you make plays. I don't think they adjusted for that. And Manchester's defense throughout the season on the road has been pretty poor.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally it. And to give up 91 to Sheffield without Johnson on the court indicates that not much has changed.
Indeed. Well, it sort of stayed with Manchester in front by 4 to 8 points sort of thing. And then midway through the third quarter, Cook and Delpeche had 4 points each. An 11-2 run gave Sheffield their first lead at 61-60. It was tied with 6 minutes to go at 79. Wallace 3, Rotino 3, both in semi-transition, weren't really picked up. Yeah. And it was 86-79 with 5.5 minutes to go. And you think, well, Sheffield looking in a good spot from there.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Cook and Delpeche, because without Johnson, they become so much more important to this team. Without Johnson's production, there are going to be more shots for them, and they're going to have to produce. Now, there are games this season where they've looked like they've been in Space Jam and the Monsters have got their talent, and there are games where they've really played exceptionally well. And if Sheffield can get consistent production out of them, that can go a long way to making up on what they lose with Johnson's shot making. And they are kind of a two-headed monster in centre. They don't, and kind of Tuck's kind of the little parrot on the shoulder of the two-headed monster, because he comes in and plays some minutes at the 5 as well. And that might be the only way that they can kind of make up for the loss of Johnson. In this game, they're impactful. Cook is playing a hell of a lot better. I don't know if he's healthy, I don't know if there's a difference in his mindset or if it's his body or whatever, but he's playing a heck of a lot better. And Delpeche has been hit and miss all season. He's probably been outplayed by his brother, to be absolutely frank. He certainly played less minutes than his brother. And they need those two guys now to score around the rim. And Manchester are a little bit soft-centered. They have without Lewis now. What I mean by soft-centered sounds a little bit derogatory, but what I mean is that they're a team you can score on inside. Dan Clark is a 5. If you can pull him out, you make him move. And then you're looking at maybe David Ulf as well, who's a great rebounder and hustle guy, but he's not the biggest on-ball defender down there. And then you're looking at Artisan at the 5, and he's basically a 4. So I'm not sure about some of that perimeter defense in relation to preventing guys getting to the rim. I don't think they're particularly adept at that either. And so, getting down low on Manchester and scoring, is the way to beat them. And, it is going to be a scoring race with them, I'm afraid. Sorry, you got to 7 points.
Yeah, so 7-point game. Then Anderson drives to the basket. Armstrong with a steal and a transition layup. Then Armstrong sort of backed out to the corner and Nichols just sagged off him, knocks down a 3. 2 minutes to go, 85-86.
That's right, yeah.
And then come down the other end, Cook, 1:40 to go. Clark actually got a little hand on the ball, but he was able to just squeeze it in, 87-86. Manchester turned the ball over on a travel by Steele, and then Cook again in the low block with the jump hook, just as you were talking about.
Yeah, that is, it's critical to get points around the basket at that point. Steele's not really been the same since, I would like to say since McKnight came back, but I think that's probably a bit of a simplification. I think he got hurt. And he's never really found a role within the team that he had at the beginning of the year. Beginning of the year, he was really impactful for them. And now he's just another one trying to find his way and make his way in there. So that's kind of an issue with Manchester's bench. They've got Whelan, they got Hudson, they got Steele, and they got Ulf. But they're going to need something out of that bench to go forward. I mean, I only mentioned that because you pointed out the travel. But those are the players that kind of matter in the which five are they going to finish with? Is the thing that every coach in the playoffs needs to work out.
The Manchester come back. Orson had a good look at a three that sort of went round and came back out again. A little unfortunate in that. And then they had Wallace in the high pick and roll with Cook. Clark jumps out of him. Armstrong follows as well, but on the wrong side, trying to double. I think it was Anderson didn't really want to help off Nichols because he didn't want to leave Nichols open. In the corner was Rotino, and whoever was guarding him didn't come off. I think it must have been Artisan, because you can't leave him in the corner wide open either. So Cook just slips to the basket and he's wide open underneath. He did almost miss it, to be fair. It sort of, that one went round as well. But he puts that in with 28 seconds to go. It's 91-86, and that's the game.
And it's the benefit of having four shooters on the court. You know, spacing is critical, particularly when it matters at the end. And I think with Wallace, you would prefer to keep him dribbling. He's not a natural point guard. He's not a natural pocket passer. You know, you don't need, I think, to commit to a situation whereby Cook's getting to catching the ball at the post. I think you prefer to have him make a shot stepping back than to give that up. So you want to fight over the screen. But ultimately, you know, it's not a fluke. You know, Sheffield have continually closed out close games, other than the Glasgow one, which they nearly did. You know, give or take a second. I mean, they won that game for being dead and buried. You know, that stands for something. How much it stands for, we'll find out next week when everybody is hopefully everybody's playing at the same level of intensity. But yeah, they're getting minutes from Mazzullo, getting, as I said, got minutes from Montgomery. I'm just interested to see how that all pans out when the intensity ratchets up.
Rotino with 25 points and 5 assists, 8 of 11 shooting. Nichols had 18 and 9. Glasgow had 16.7 rebounds, 6 assists. Armstrong 21 and 8 for the Giants. Clark 17, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. Anderson 11. So that is second place for the Sharks in the league table, which is their best finish since 2014 when they also finished second. So
just on that mind, they put a photograph out.
Yeah.
Team photo celebrating finishing second. Something like that. You know,
I don't mind that.
I'm sorry. I'm old school. That's not a celebration.
Yeah, I think it's a good achievement from where they were.
I think it's a good achievement. I agree it's a good achievement, but you know, it's still first loser.
Oh, I think you're a bit harsh there on them there. So
there you go. That's the end of Sheffield people listening to it.
Newcastle winning, it meant that Plymouth would have to win at Leicester to prevent the Sunday afternoon decider, and they didn't. It was Leicester 92, Plymouth 82. Some early threes from Simons had the City Patriots out to a 15-9 lead, but Leicester the next 8-17-15, and it was pretty close for the rest of the first half.
Yeah, back and forwards. Obviously, we were watching the Newcastle game. Watch this back a little bit. Leicester are in that kind of don't get injured type of mode as well. So everybody's playing a certain amount of minutes. But it doesn't really matter because they've got 9 starters. So, you know, they can still put out a pretty competitive 5 at any one time. Plymouth are playing with, you know, that devil may care. We need one win. We're going to get it this. We're going to get it if we can. We're going to play fearlessly and, you know, attacking the rim and all of that stuff. But Plymouth are just a little bit short against Leicester. They don't have the size that Leicester have. Hassan and Graham Bell are really outmatched by all the size of Walker and Loving and those guys.
And Hassan got in foul trouble as well, so he only played 12 minutes.
In foul trouble against Leicester. You know, I mean, I'm sure you go back on the games, it's almost like he has a mental block playing against his old team. You know, he is not impactful against Leicester, maybe because of how they know how to guard him, or it might just be something in his own head, but he's going to have to figure it out. And so he got into foul trouble. And they're not quite, you know, kind of deep enough. And also, they're not a great, Plymouth are not a great outside shooting team outside of Simons, who's kind of a little bit hit and miss, but he's a good shooter. Williams really doesn't look to shoot it. Joe Hart will shoot it if he's open, and Raoul Graham Bell will shoot it a little bit if he's open. But they're not they're a team which relies on getting in the paint, scoring in the paint. Both Williams, Hassan, all those guys, and it's tough for them to get good looks at threes against the length of Leicester's defense. And then we got into the second half, and eventually Leicester did what they do, which is just their depth just pulls away from the game.
Well, they got it out to double figures early in the second half with Whelan and Nelson Henry scoring, but Williams had 7 in an 8-0 run. It's a 3-point game going into the last quarter. Straight away in the first minute, Washington 3, Walker at the basket. Leicester are up 71-63, and you and I were watching this on the big screen at Virtue Motors Arena, and I was going, is he going to put the starters back in, do you think? Do you think he's going to put the starter? And he didn't really. I mean, I think Whelan came back at some point, but basically he trusted that bench unit, and they just kept Plymouth at bay.
Look, I mean, for most teams, Adekoya is a starter. For most teams, Connor Washington is a starter. For most teams, Kimball McKenzie is very close to a starter, if not a sixth man. So, the benefit of giving those guys reps is significant to them, and giving the other guys rest is significant to them. On top of that, the fact that the bench closed out that game, probably shows the starters, hang on, we need to be ready to play. And finally, I've said it time and time again, the more Connor plays, the better he is. And he made big shots when the team was in his hands, the game was his to win, and he made the big shots to win the game and play the defense. I think he drew an offensive foul on Antonio Williams.
He did, yeah.
Leicester fans are spoiled to kind of have him and have a guy with his mentality and his talent, but the mentality to accept the role that he's been given and play it so effectively. And I was thinking back, and actually, I was watching that game. It kind of struck us in the car afterwards. I was thinking about that game in that in an entirely different type of player. But my first few years, we had Bridgie in Newcastle. Andrew Bridge, for those who are new to the league, I have to look him up. He's probably listening to this. But Bridgie was very much the same. He wasn't just playing because he was British. He was playing because he was helping us win, and people didn't realize he was helping us win. Entirely under it. And if you go into the finals that we played, and he never won MVP, but I'm telling you, at least 3 of them, he was the second most important player in our team, if not the first. And Connor is the same in big games. The role that he's got, he's not going to get the shots, he's not going to make the dunks, he's not going to get the publicity, he's not going to go behind his back or throw it through his legs like Gino or anything like that. But when he is invested in the game, and what I mean by that is he's not just coming in and playing a couple of minutes, when he's got a role to perform and a job to do, then the little things he does win games. And it didn't surprise me that he closed out that game at all.
Yeah. Well, Plymouth got it down. It went to 12 with 4 minutes ago. Plymouth got it down to 84-79. I think it was Simon's 3 that got it there. But then Washington scored, Whelan and 1, back to 10, and that was the game. Washington led the Riders with 20 points. Walker had 17 and 9. Obviously, both of those coming off the bench. Whelan with 17. Simon's 22 points. Williams 20 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 of 10 shooting, and Graham Bell 13 and 10, although 4 of 11 from the floor. So let's go to Saturday night. We can't skip straight to Sunday. We're already missing one game. Bristol Flyers 95, Surrey Scorchers 55, and I've written down here, bit of a slow death, this just easing away.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a slow death, and then you add in the cremation, the burial ceremony, and probably the death. I mean, come on, a death is 40 points. Not unsurprising. I mean, Surrey, as I've said before, totally overmatched in relation to personnel, without any particular motivation to play. Bristol in a bit of a rhythm, feeling good about themselves, and also a team who plays good defense, so aren't really going to get into shootout with Surrey, which would be Surrey's only real chance of scoring the ball with the guys that they've got on the court. They've got their, Ryan. I think Ryan Gannicliffe started this game, and he's probably their 11th man. He's a student. And you can't just plug in. Dean Wonders was playing 2 minutes a game, and he's playing the whole game. So you can't just plug and play guys in and expect exactly the same. And you often hear this is kind of a lament from the fans, which is, why don't we play our bench more? There's a reason that our bench is on the bench, is because either they're not ready. They're there to help, they're there to be good in practice, they're there to get better. But there's, this isn't, it's not a game. It is a game, but it's not a game, if you know what I mean. This is serious, high level and professional basketball. Unfortunately, there are people who are made for it, and there are people who are still developing their skills to get to the point whereby they're ready for it. And Surrey are having to throw some of those guys in there, and that just leads you to, as you say, a slow death, and the nails hammered in.
Yeah. Well, the only excitement in the second half was whether Bristol would get their biggest ever win. They were just short in the end, 96-54 against the Rocks, if you remember.
I may say, colour me unexcited by
Yeah. Well, for Bristol fans, it's exciting. And then Creon getting disqualified for 2 technicals either side of the
I didn't see that. Yeah. I didn't see that. I think that's disqualified for a frustrated season. I guess. Yeah. Just on that, I mean, I'm sorry, you can't take up with the tweet out, saying we've got to be better, etc., blah blah. But the refs got to be better as well. Saying no, you've got to be better. Yeah. Forget the refs. You got to be by 40. Yeah. Sorry, you might not like what's happening to you, blah blah. You might be frustrated. I get all of that. You might think that in your head. I get all of that. But no, you've won 2 games. You can't complain about the refs. Sorry. Rant over.
Jacob 19 and 7, Simmons at 14 and 9. They were both off the bench as well. Miller had 14, although 4 of 12 shooting and 11 rebounds. Thomas 21 and 8, McLemore 10 and 6. They were 29% from field goals, 19 turnovers, which turned into 21 points. Sorry. And I think
Evan Thomas, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I think I said earlier that Cheshire were confirmed in 6th after their game. It wasn't after their game. It was after this game that Cheshire were confirmed in 6th.
Well, 21 points for Devin Thomas. Yeah, well, thank you. Keep me right, because obviously I'm a stickler for this type of stuff.
Yeah, you are.
Right, okay. Devin Thomas is 21 points. No, that led to him sitting out on Sunday with a damaged shoulder from all the tackling he was doing. Because he didn't play either in the next game, I don't think.
No, let's get into that game Sunday. Surrey Scorchers 69, Sheffield Sharks 83. No Baldwin for the Sharks, no body basically for the Scorchers. I mean, they had all of their foreign players out. Jules Dangankodo was out. Legend was still out. Andrew Lawrence is still, sat there
good
watching.
Team on the bench.
They did have a good team on the bench. Yeah, absolutely. And basically, they've got no size. Thomas, Ringer, and they've basically got nothing inside. So Cook and Delpesh were getting easy scores, and this went away early.
Yeah, and it was. Look, I mean, what Surrey are putting out, and this is not an attempt to be disrespectful. I hope nobody takes it as being disrespectful. Is an NBL1 team without all those Americans. That's what they have, and Sheffield are now a solid BBL team with a good run behind them. So there was never any question. I watched Bennett Cook make, I think, 3 shots in the first 4 minutes. Watched a little bit more, but after that, obviously, I then turned to Plymouth and Newcastle.
Yeah, lead was 27 late in the third quarter. I was the one person who still had Niall on in the background, so I was watching this and I saw the shots that they made late on. Surrey made a couple of threes and won the fourth quarter and got the gap down to the point where they might nearly have got it back to single figures for what that was worth, but they didn't quite. The reality is they've won 1 game since New Year's Day. They've won 2 games all season, so I'm sure they'll be glad to see the back of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a pretty brutal set of scheduling, which ends up with you playing Bristol at 7:30 and then Surrey at 2:00 on the last weekend when you've got no players. So you have to give a little bit of that. But
Or the
you
2
know,
o'clock thing, they burns
that's their own
everybody
fault.
else. So there's
Yeah,
the first time
absolutely.
they've
Yeah,
got burned by.
I live in Newcastle at 6 a.m. It's
Yeah,
great fun.
yeah. Macklemore 17, Raftopoulos 15, Teo 13, 8, and 4. Muzzolo 17, reliably informed that's the first time he's led the Sharks in scoring, and 7. You can guess who told me that. Delpesh 16 and 9, and Nichols 14. So let's go to the main event of the day at the Pavilions. The Plymouth City Patriots 80, Newcastle Eagles 72. So the Patriots into the playoffs in the first season of this new company, new rebrand of City Patriots. Your tweet said it
Perhaps I
all.
can start.
Go on then.
Yeah.
Your tweet said it all in the beginning. It was Defoe and Fletcher versus the Patriots, wasn't it?
When I agreed to start doing this podcast for you about 18 months ago, my contemplation was that it would be a celebration of Newcastle's omnipotence and their continuation of years of success, and would give me an appropriate kind of platform in which to celebrate their successes and slag off the rest of the league. Sadly, that's turned out to be slightly presumptuous. In that, the fall has come and the fall has been hard. Let's be blunt. Indeed. And I've ended up hopefully being far more even-handed than I thought I ever would be, because ultimately you only talk about what's in front of you, and what's in front of you has happened this year. The resurgence at Plymouth is incredible. Let's be clear. I mean, and they have PJ, so we can't, underestimate the fact that he's somebody who knows how to win in the BBL, right? But to go from what they were to what they are, it's like the first 80%, as it were. The next 20% is going to be very hard, but the first 80%, to do that in 3 months, to do it cultivating kind of with the spirit they've kind of cultivated amongst them, albeit at times a little bit, probably a little bit more than they need, a little bit over aggressive, but that's better than being under aggressive, right? Newcastle the opposite. In every big moment this season, they've kind of faded. They've slunk away from it. And watching that game today, I'll be blunt, I was immensely frustrated for my guys, for Fletcher and Defoe, because Ramon came out ready to absolutely, that was a playoff game. And Darius knocked down his first couple of jump shots and is being aggressive at the rim. And I didn't see any degree of urgency from anybody else. Now, that said, I was in, they're starting Gordon, Peel, and Defoe, so 3 bigs, and Gordon is effectively the 3. He was being guarded by Joe Hart the first 6 minutes of the game. He never touched the ball.
Yeah.
And they made 1 or 2 half-hearted efforts to get him the ball, but in the post. Now, to me, that just can't be. If you were going to scream mismatch close to the basket at any matchup in this league that I've seen all season, in any game, Ralph Thomas Edwards maybe has got maybe a shot on a couple of matchups he's had, but apart from that, it's Justin Gordon and Joe Hart. And Newcastle never touched the ball. They didn't run anything special to get him the ball down low, and didn't seek to play through him. And as a result, they had 6 points after 7 minutes. Those points were all basically Fletch throwing it to Darius. Darius having to knock down shots. Then Fletch makes a 3. And I think apart from maybe a Corey Johnson layup, nobody else scored in the first quarter. Now, that can happen in league games, right? That can happen during the depths of the season, where you have ups and downs and everybody's going through their peaks and troughs and all the cliches you want to use, right? That cannot happen in a one-off playoff game.
No.
Everybody has to be on it, because what happens is it feeds from the rest of the team, because Fletcher is looking around and thinking, who of these guys is going to show up? Who's going to step up and make plays? He knows Darius is, because he's throwing Darius the ball. and Darius is knocking down shots, and Darius is there physically, and he's played with them for like 7 years. But he's also looking at everybody else thinking, well, what am I going to get? And that then cultivates a mistrust in him in relation to what's going on around him. And it puts even more weight on the shoulders that have really been fairly burdened this year, given that he's played more minutes than anybody else in the league. You then add in the fact that Newcastle's transition defense is horrible and gives up the points that ultimately win this game on runouts and on layups. And so whilst you can have players who aren't contributing offensively, who aren't getting it going, if they're not making plays defensively as well, then that leads you to someone like me. And I haven't tweeted much during games this year, being so frustrated that I'm tweeting that.
Yeah.
Would somebody apart from Ramon or Darius show up, please?
Yeah.
Because this is a playoff game, and I don't care what they've got on the bus yesterday. They've stayed in the hotel last night. They're coming off a win. They're ready to play, or they're ready to get back on the plane. Which one is it? You tell me. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. But I don't think they did the coach any favors. Put it this way.
Just
anyway, sorry.
For the sake of some balance, I thought Plymouth were ready to play, and I thought Graham Bell in particular crashing the glass and all of that.
I thought they were ready to play, but I thought they're also a fragile team, right? And Antonio Williams, Troy Simons, Joe Hart, were inefficient in this game, right? What carried Plymouth is 51 points and 25 rebounds from Rashad Hassan and Raul Graham-Bell.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And and much of that, and particularly in relation to Raul Graham-Bell, was in transition.
Yeah,
and the stuff with Rashad Hassan,
offensive glass as well.
Offensive glass, that type of stuff, effort stuff, So no, I'll not say that Plymouth weren't ready to play. I think they were, and the crowd was in, and it's a big, and you expect them to be at home, but they weren't invulnerable either.
No,
they were there. Not say there to be taken, but Newcastle had every chance of winning that game because Plymouth are a young team mentally. They're an athletic team, but they've had some flashpoints. They're an emotional team, and in games like that, that can count against you. And I think it did. I think Plymouth made 1-3 in the whole game. Which is generally the sign of tightness. You make 1-3 in your home gym. That generally means you're a bit tight. The game's a bit much, and you're not quite shooting in rhythm. You're not quite playing in rhythm. So that game was there. And then even in the second quarter, it kind of remained, the question of, are Plymouth going to put this game away, or is Fletcher just going to make enough plays to keep Newcastle in it? He just about did, I think.
Yeah. Well, they had a 10-point lead, 46-36 in the second quarter early on after Hassan and won. But then Newcastle had an 8-0 run. Gordon had four of them. No, to 46-44. Is that the third quarter? Start of the third quarter. Sorry, my mistake. Yes, because it was 43-34 at half time.
I tweeted out. I tweeted out at half time again. You looked at the stats; it was astounding. Newcastle had 12 field goals and Fletcher and Defoe had 9 of them. Newcastle had 11 assists, Fletcher and Defoe had 9 of them. Sayers played 8 minutes, had no stats, 8 trillion. Peel was 0 of 1 with 1 rebound from 12 minutes. Pearson was 0 of 1 with 1 assist in 12 minutes. Johnson was 1 of 4, 2 points, 1 assist in 12 minutes. Just nothing. And then you look at Fletcher 14 and 5 and Defoe 8 and 6 or whatever, and you're just thinking, will somebody please, step up. Now, what happened was in the beginning of the third quarter, I thought Plymouth got a little bit tight, and eventually Justin Gordon got going. And it wasn't, I don't think the first half was on Justin Gordon. I just think Newcastle did an awfully bad job of getting him involved, if I'm honest, because he's playing the 3 instead of playing the 4, so he's in a different spot, and they didn't get him. He wasn't effective. He wasn't able to crash the glass, but he got going a little bit. Brandon Peel made a couple of plays, and suddenly, I think Ramon maybe knocked down a 3 as well. And suddenly, as you say, it's a 1-point game. And more importantly, the energy in the building is changing. The guys on commentary did a great job because they kind of spotted that the talking that was going on, and the players were getting into it in what looked like a relatively respectful way. There was no kind of squaring up or anything like that. And there was some smiles as well as some comments. But particularly Fletch was getting into it. Williams was getting into it. Hassan was getting into it. And there was some talking about. And to be honest, that favoured Newcastle because I thought that it was less Plymouth were the team that was more likely to implode through emotion, whereas Newcastle were going to lose through lack of emotion.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And so I really liked from my sitting there as a fan for once. I enjoyed the emotion of that, and I enjoyed the rhythm of the game. I thought it was going. I thought Newcastle looked quite good. Then Fletcher came out, which I didn't understand. 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, just didn't get that at all. He didn't get it either by the looks of it.
He didn't, did he?
And the reason for that, I think, is the psychology of the player. The reason of the coach will be, well, we're back in the game. We need to get a bit of a rest. We're going to need you to play the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But the psychology of the player is, hang on, we're going, we're rolling.
Yeah.
We may a couple of players now. We can increase the pressure on their throat and see if they crack. I'm talking, right? I don't need to be sat down there now. And I thought, it was one of those games where Newcastle had to get up. If they'd got up, maybe 4, 5, 6 points, I'm not sure whether Plymouth would have had the talent to get back. Yeah. I'm not sure whether they would have had the emotional maturity to get back.
Yeah.
Because they're also fragile.
The other thing about that is that sort of feeds into the crowd, doesn't it? Whilst Plymouth are keeping ahead and making plays, the crowd is up and whatever. Whereas when you get that tension in any sporting event, you can feel it in a football game in the last 20 minutes when the crowd's starting to worry about an equaliser and the team drops deeper and deeper. The crowd can have that sort of impact. That's the one downside of
cricket matches. They call it scoreboard pressure, don't they? Scoreboard pressure. And that's what it is. And Newcastle never had the opportunity, never placed it on Plymouth because they never got over the hump. And I thought, the momentum. I thought there was I think maybe it was only a minute and 20 seconds he was out of the game, and there was a timeout in between. It may have only been 2-0 or 4-0 in that time. Yeah. But I just thought that was a chance because the flow of the game at that point was in Newcastle's favour.
Well, it had gone out to 10. It had come back down to 1 with a person 3 early in the fourth quarter, 60 to 59. And then Defoe got a fourth foul with 7:50 to go, scored 62-59. Immediately, Plymouth get the next 5 points, a Dusha wide open 3, and it's 67-59. And again, it feels comfortable for Plymouth with 6:46 to go.
Yeah, and that, it's tough, but, these guys have won for a reason. When they're there, things are better than when they're not. It's in the playoffs. We're going to talk about this next week. The lineups that the coach has on court, who he trusts to win games, are more important than just about anything else. And it's the structure of what they do. It's whether or not guys are ready to knock down shots at the other end. Because Justin Gordon stepped up in the second half and he made some plays. He kept. He is a gamer. There's no question in my mind. He's a gamer. We saw it last year, and we saw it this year as well. But they can't be as reliant. These are professional players. They can't be reliant on a 37-year-old centre and a 33-year-old point guard to constantly make plays, constantly, to remain in games, because it just becomes too much. So Defoe has to play on the edge of physicality anyway. That's what he has to do. He has to play on the line. That's the way he can disrupt and play defense. So there are times he's going to be in foul trouble, and the other guys have to step up, and they didn't at the key points in the game. And there is a key point when you get the game down to 1. That is a key point. Not every possession is worth the same. Statisticians think they are, but they're not. The possessions when the game is being decided are most important. And when you're in a one-shot game, that's when it is. Because a 6-point run which turns the tables can decide that game at that point. It's not about waiting for the last 2 minutes. It's about facilitating the psychological breakdown of the opposition. And I think ultimately Plymouth retained enough composure in the game. And and Newcastle showed insufficient will. That sounds crazy, because what's will? How do you define will? I don't know, right? But insufficient gumption, or whatever you want to call it, kind of chops to knock down a big shot, to take a big charge, to make a play when you really needed a play to be made, to win that game. I think Plymouth deserved to win it ultimately.
2:14 to go. Defoe fouls out on a technical in between two free throws for Dusha. I wasn't quite sure why. He was 73-68 at the time.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't. There were a couple of calls which were in the game which could have gone either way. There was one, I think Defoe got his warning when he made a great defensive play, slapped the ball off Williams' foot.
Flag. Yeah.
And the referee from 3 feet away couldn't see that Williams kicks the ball out of bounds. Yeah. They got the guys in the camera got a great close up. Yeah. You can see Darius. What? He did it. He touched it. Yeah. Now he gets a warning for that. Well, he's right. Yeah. He's right. They have to see. They have to make that call. To call a technical with 2.5 minutes to go in the game. Now I know Darius, and I'm probably being a little bit biased here because I know him. He will have said nothing that has not been said throughout that game, and he won't have been talking to the refs. It'll be to what was going, because it was in between foul shots.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So that means
Dusha had missed the first foul shot as well.
It wasn't his foul. Darius. I've never known. Again, I'm biased because I've been going. I know him for 11 years, coaching for 11 years. I've never known him complain about anybody else's foul. He gets a foul, he'll twist. Most players do. We never worried about it. It wasn't his foul, right? So there's no way in the world that he's still going at the referee at that point. I can 99% guarantee that. It will be whatever chatter was going on with Dusha and Williams and all those other guys. It's been going on throughout the game, right? And to call a technical at that point, I'm afraid that's when you have to, as a referee, you have to have selective deafness. And I would say that whether that was Darius who's my guy or whether it was anybody else. You have to have selective deafness. If it's enough whereby the free throw shooter is kind of wanting to come and fight you, if you're saying something off that, obviously the refs have to control the game. But there was nothing in relation to the control of the game that was going on. Now, obviously, had the boys about to shoot a foul shot, game would have continued. I think that, and I'm quite sure that on the bus back there'll be some concern about that. I mean, that's just being the same referee who put his fist up last week for a foul and didn't blow his whistle. I think Newcastle may have a few words about that. I don't agree with it. Other than that, I thought the game was ref pretty well.
Because Dusha actually missed both free throws, and it was the technical free throw that was
the foul shot, didn't he?
In between. Peel gets an offensive rebound put back with 92 seconds to go, 74-70, and then Newcastle almost got a steal, knocked the ball loose, but it bounces straight to Hassan, who says thanks very much, lays it in for 276-70.
That's basketball karma. That's the gods. You don't defend the interior all season. You finally you get a touch, bang. You finally get a steal, ball doesn't bounce your way. You don't make the plays when you need to, the ball doesn't bounce your way. Tough karma.
Gordon drive to the basket with a minute to go, 76-72. Hassan, top of the key, just inside the foul line, knocks down a shot, 78, pretty wide open, 78-72. Gordon missed a three. They're obviously down 6 at that point with 38 seconds to go, and they didn't foul. So Plymouth ran all the clock, and then a great pass from Williams to Graham Bell for alley dunk, which was basically the coffin.
When Gordon missed that three, they were defeated down. That was the game. That was the game. It was the end of a pretty ordinary season, a long trip home, and as I say, a couple of guys I'm afraid who played in that game like they'd already got a plane ticket.
Graham Bell had
names, I never do, but people can make their own judgments.
Graham Bell had 26 points, 11 rebounds, and shot 13 of 21. Hassan had 25 points and 12 rebounds, shot 12 of 14. Incredible efficiency as usual. Williams 11, 5 and 6. Fletcher had 21 and 7. Gordon had 20 and 7. Eagles were 26 of 66 from the floor and 6 of 22 from 3-point range.
Yeah, and Plymouth were 1 of 12 and still won, which is rare. I thought, the thing with Hassan, there's two things about Hassan. One, I've said before, you have to defend him so he doesn't touch the ball in the paint. That's the first thing. But the second thing is you have to do a far better job of going at him offensively because he is foul prone. And, I don't remember, we were talking about the success that they had with Defoe's post-ups on Friday night against Glasgow.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, if you go back in that Plymouth game, I'm thinking back now, I don't remember Darius having any post-up touches really at all. And I'm thinking, maybe he had one and he was fouled by maybe Adekunle or somebody in the first half. But I'm thinking, you've got to try and, match him up on Hassan and try and bully Hassan and have Hassan commit some fouls. Because otherwise that's what Rashad Hassan's going to do. Look, overall, the story of Plymouth has been an incredible one. And we shouldn't bemoan that by the fact that they beat the story of Newcastle, which is kind of equally incredible, but albeit in a different manner. They have gone, 12 and 6, 12 and 7. They were 0 and 8, and
they were 0 and 8
in the last 19 games. Yeah, they finished 12 and 7. Well, that's that if that team plays together the whole season, realistically, they're taking a photograph now and celebrating second place.
Indeed, yeah.
So credit to them, and a shout out. I'm going to give one more shout out for Fletcher, because I thought he came out the way that he came out in that game, demonstrated that he's still whatever people think he's still got it, because he was just waiting for somebody else to follow his lead.
So I said I'd give Fletcher's assist numbers. He finished with a average of 10.56 assists per game, which is the best single season average in the history of the BBL, surpassing Alton Bird's 10.16. They're the only two players to average double figures for assists for an entire season. He had 264 assists, which is fifth most for his season, which, bearing in mind, it was a 27-game season, and a lot of those above him, all of those above him, are playing 30, 33, 36, 40 games.
Obviously with the average numbers,
Yeah, his career average now, assists per game, and I have to go to 3 decimal points on this, you'll see why, is 7.815, which places him second behind Alton Bird, who is 7.816. He basically needed one more assist today to go back.
We'll restart that game,
won't we? So assuming he comes back for another year, if he can average more than 8 a game, he will have the best ever. And 200th league game as well for Fletcher.
Well, I will say the other thing. I mean, the game has changed massively. So you talked about how it's just easier to get now, and that's undoubtedly true. And again, if you go back 40 years, and so, there was a 3-point lane, but I think only just when Alton was playing. But the one thing I will say is
the numbers for Alton are BBL only. He obviously played from, I think it was 78 to 87, but then played on another 5 years after that.
I mean, the one thing I will say is Alton wasn't, the way the basketball was then, Alton wasn't required to score. As much as point guards nowadays are as well. So I don't know if Alton, I even averaged double figures. He was an absolute god of a distributor. He had a lot of good players on his team, and he would just get them the ball and keep them all happy and just navigate his way through the game. But whilst it's easier to get assists now, it's also kind of the counter argument is that point guards now have to score more as well to get assists. And that's something that Fletcher does probably better than Bird ever did.
I mean, it's a totally different game, but those are the numbers that we have, and they're both incredible numbers from both players. Let's move on to our final game of the day. Cheshire Phoenix 101, Bristol Flyers 100. No Dixon for Cheshire. This was Bristol's chance to finish as high as third if they could win, but they didn't, so they can't. Wright and Bradley scoring freely. They eased out to a 12-point lead. It looked actually...
I just summarise this game. I've thought about this. Sorry, I've thought about this. I'd like to summarise this game in 3 lines. Do you think I can do it?
Go on then.
Just go on, 3 lines. I tried to do it in haiku form, but couldn't quite get the syllables right. End of season, close game. Sorry, 4 lines. Little defense. Bristol can't inbound the ball.
Well, Well,
that's the game.
Let's wrap up
Sorry.
Sunday night.
I'm finished now.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you say, there wasn't much defense, but it looked like Cheshire were the team that wanted to / needed to win, and obviously it made no difference to them whether they
I
won
think
or
Ben
not.
has had a few words in relation to what happened on Friday night.
Yeah.
I don't think that they played with a degree of fire that I wasn't really expecting, which suggested that they'd been given a rocket.
Yeah. And Graham, Carey, Wright all had some threes. Nick's had a 21-6 spell in 7 minutes, and we're 20 points up just before halftime. And you thought, this game could be over. We could get an early one on Sunday night breakdown. But to be fair, Bristol started the third quarter 10-2. Ocherobia picked up his 4th foul, and Flyers just kept reeling them in.
Yeah, if I was writing a scouting report on Bristol, I think we'd have in gold. I've never written it on a scouting report before. I think you'd have gold print embossed on the top. Watch for the beginning of the third quarter, because every third quarter they fly out the blocks. I don't know if, as I say, I don't know what Andreas is putting in their coffee. Albeit, I've been around a few locker rooms, never had coffee there, apart from when we had Kareem Maddox, who for the reason used to drink an espresso before the game. Anyway,
Bernardini used to do that. He always used to have
Bernardini
coffee.
do that as well. That might explain a lot, actually. Yeah. Kareem kind of needed it to go from kind of comatose to kind of basketball level. I think Tyler needed it probably to go from fired up to loony fired up. If I'm probably right. I could have. He did provide. He didn't give Rob any. That's all right. So that was a thing for a while, coffee. But whatever they had in their in their water, Andreas has got them going. And the reality is that they're better now because I talked about it last week. Their offensive droughts have gone. Why are their offensive droughts gone? Because their centers are finishing better. Simmons is playing better, and they've got 3 guards who are playing regularly. Which they didn't have for 4 months of this season. So whilst Andreas was trying to balance various minutes and all of this stuff during the season, they struggled. Now that they have Miller, Evans, and Jacob, and those 3 guys are now getting comfortable playing with each other and instead of each other, they're a team that can suddenly drop 85 to 90 points on you. And Cheshire are on demand. I talked about it. Robbie Graham played a lot of minutes in this game, did all right, knocked down a couple of shots. But if you'd written at the beginning of the season that he was going to be in your playoff rotation, Ben Thomas would have probably said, no, I don't think so. But he looks like he is, so that makes it harder for those guys to maintain their intensity defensively for 40 minutes because they've got, 6 guys and then Robbie Graham and Radwan Bakali. And that means Austin sits down and they have to save a bit. So I thought that's what happened. I thought the foot came a little bit off the pedal. And then after that, it was a bit of a kind of a shootout. And we all know who a shootout favors, Dan, don't we?
The home team, you tell us every week.
Team.
So Bristol had a 19-6 run early in the 4th quarter to lead 84-90. Then Carey hits a 3, Wright hits a 2. It's 90-92. And then they had a couple of mad turnovers each.
Yeah.
Evans then scored 90-95 with 150 to go.
Then Wright went off, didn't he?
Wright hits a 3, a clumsy offensive foul by Jacob, just running into, I think it was Robbie Graham, and then Wright hit another 3 in the corner and 122 to go, and suddenly Cheshire are 96-95 up.
Yeah, well, Naaman Wright actually made some shots in this game. He is a very, very smooth scorer. There's times whereby you get the feeling he might be derailed if he's not quite feeling right, if he's got a little knock or something like that. But when he is in his rhythm and he's comfortable, he is the smoothest scorer as there is probably in the league. And what I mean by scorer, not just a guy who can knock down a shot, but a guy who can get his own shot and who can finish at the rim and even who can pull up a little bit, albeit he tends to shoot the more efficient shots of 3s and 2s. And the reality is, I think that they will go as far in the playoffs as he can carry them. With the lineup that they've got at the moment. Because Larry Austin has to be reined in a little bit because he has to play minutes at the point and Teddy's taking a rest if Teddy's resting, and he can't burn himself out and play like that over 40 minutes. So Naaman's shot making is going to be absolutely critical to them going forward. And in this game, he's one of those players whereby I think you would say you cannot let him get into his shooting pocket. As soon as he gets into his pocket to bring the ball up, if he brings the ball up, it doesn't matter where you're defending, you're dead if he's got it there. what you've got to do is you've got to get right into him and almost take away that shooting pocket so he can't get into his shot because it's so smooth. And they made some shots which Bristol probably wouldn't have given up if it wasn't their 19th game in 26 days or something ridiculous.
Evans misses a layup. Teddy Okorafor and Mike Ocherobi with a little old-fashioned give and go. Reminded me of the 70s.
Nice.
That
Teddy made a couple of nice moves. He made a spin move in this game, which kind of made me like, ooh, Teddy. He was going in the left wing, going right to left. Oof. Yeah. I've not seen
98-95 with a minute to go. Evans then dumps it into Simmons in the low block. He scores 98-97. And then Cheshire had the ball knocked out of bounds. So the sideline ball, 29.8 seconds to go, 9 on the shot clock. They got it in, and Larry Austin made a very Larry Austin play. Just drove to the rim.
That was a defensive meltdown. I'm sorry, you can't be giving Larry Austin a right-hand drive straight down the middle. At that point, you've got to make a wall. Somebody else has to be. I know you might want to help. You might not want to help off Neymar, but maybe you want him to throw it to Kyle or to Levi or to whoever else is in the game. You just can't. You can't let Larry Austin get a layup because he's made more layups this season than just about probably anybody else in the league, particularly off a 9-second shot clock. And you're doing it by letting him go to a strong hand as well. No way. Come on. Anyway, so it's one of those games.
It's 100-97. 14 seconds to go. Neymar right with the foul. It was only the third team foul of the quarter. So it's a sideline ball, opposite end of the floor. Not otherwise, but same outcome. It took a long time for the pass to come, and then when it came, it was stolen away by Mike Ocherobi, who ran down court and ran some clock.
I didn't watch it back. I just kind of closed the laptop in disgust. I'm like, I've done enough. I've said enough about this. Ultimately, if you want to throw the ball across court and have it stolen, and then it becomes a. It would undergo the pain of the Greek hero Achilles to describe it as their Achilles. It is beyond their Achilles heel. It is. It is. What did you say before? They were dead. Well, and I said they were primitive. It's exterminated. You cannot win games down the stretch if you cannot get the ball on the court. And I think I could run a practice. I think you'd run a practice for about an hour, and you try each and every one of them and work out how it is we're going to get the ball about. Who's going to pass it this time? Because the coach will be tearing his hair out. Players have to be smart and have to be able to get open. And so I didn't watch it, but I'm not going to take it apart. But that was the game basically.
Yeah. So Austin made one of 2 free throws. There was a foul, and then Jacob hits a 3 on the buzzer to make it 101-100. And it still will be Bristol's highest ever finish in the league. Their previous best was 6th. In 2000.
I'm sure the photograph will be online soon.
17-18, they will be the 4th or 5th. Wright had 33 points, 13 of 19. Austin with 19 points and 9 assists. Teddy had 19 as well. They were 11 of 24 from 3. Thomas Edwards with 22. Evans 18, 6 and 9. Simmons 17 and 9. So the basic maths of the last game is if the Giants win, it finishes Giants 3rd, Lions 4th, Flyers 5th. If Lions win, it finishes Lions 3rd, Flyers 4th, and Giants 5th. And I was just going to try and look at the score, but it still says 0-0 on here. So there we go. It's 36-40. It's just gone off. I think it's 36-40 at halftime in favour of London. It is. So we're no closer to knowing what might happen in that. No. But either way, again,
we do have one more on the tally of home teams scoring 95, though, don't we?
Yes. That might need updating. Yes,
92 or something ridiculous. Play some defense on the road teams, please.
Yeah, it would help. Either way, whatever happens in that other game, Manchester will have their highest ever finish in the league as well. Their best has been 7th in 2013-14. So just I can't really do the league table because it's not finished beyond what I've already told you, but I can give you some stats for Leicester's dominance because I know you'll enjoy them. that was the biggest winning
We're running
margin.
out of time, Dan.
No, I think we've got
The
time.
podcast is running out of time. Yeah.
It was the biggest winning margin in the history of BBL, 16 points clear of second place. The previous best was a 10-point gap, which Leicester did in 17-18, 12-13. Newcastle did in 7-8, and Kingston did in 90-91. They are also the first team since Brighton Bears to in 2004 to lead the league in points per game and points against per game. It's only happened 3 times. Kingston in 89-90 was the other one. And they have the second biggest differential in the history of the league. 19.4 points per game was their average winning margin. Kingston in 91-92, 23.4 is the only one bigger than that. It's actually the only one in the top 5 since 1994. It used to happen a lot more regularly in the early stages.
It's just dominant. I mean, you can't, there's no other word for it. Just absolutely dominant. And to be fair, that's what the eye test has showed as well. It's not just what the numbers say. The eye test has shown that too. I think, just dominant. I think they were helped. If I may say, the only thing I would say is they were helped by losing that trophy game because, in relation to the league numbers, because you don't have to play 4 more games, you don't have to rest a few more guys, but just dominant. In relation to the league, just dominant.
So we know that Leicester will play Plymouth, and we know Sheffield will play Glasgow, and you'll have to look on Twitter to see what's up with the rest of them. I'm sure somebody will tell you, but we won't because we're finishing now. I will say we might be going to Monday night breakdowns. I haven't told Dave this for the playoffs, just on the basis that the Sky game next Sunday is to be confirmed as to where it is, and therefore it's getting back. And likewise, the following weekend, there's a game on Sunday as well. So we might have to do it on Monday.
You're doing 3 o'clock, are you?
I think it's 4 o'clock. I think it's 4 o'clock. All right. 4 o'clock next week, 4 o'clock on the following Sunday. And I think we've got one on Saturday night as well. So we should have the 2 semi-final.
That's Sheffield, probably, isn't it? Because it could be Manchester.
Next week, and I don't think Manchester have Sunday night. So I think it will likely be Sheffield or Leicester, although that hasn't been confirmed yet. And then the following week will be the 2 second legs of both semi-finals. So should be good. So that means
you've got the second legs. It's good that you're doing the second legs. I'm a fan of that. You've got to get some closure on all of this.
You just have to hope that the first legs are closed, because the last thing you want to do is
that's true, but the first leg's still kissing your sister, isn't it? It's the calm before the anticlimax. Climax. And it's just my moment for the annual rant about why we play 2-legged playoffs. We shouldn't do it. We do it in the cup. We do it in the trophy. The problem with the 2-legged playoff is that in the 4 quarterfinals, you're going to get 1 potentially close finish at the end of the second leg in each one. That's 4 close finishes. You play the best of 3. You could have 12 close finishes. The product is better as a best of 3, where teams don't have to worry about points difference at the end of the first leg. If you blow a team out, you move on to the next game. There's no reason invented, as far as I'm concerned, in relation to venues nowadays, why we can't do that. There are only 4 teams who are going to play 2 home games at worst, and that would be Leicester, who've got their own venue, Sheffield, who not much else goes on in Ponds Forge, Manchester, who've got their own, potentially Manchester, who've got their own venue, Bristol, who've got their own venue, and London, who, they've got so much money it doesn't matter. That's a 2 penneth.
Well, the interesting thing was
start the campaign here, people online. Start it.
Well, on the COVID season, the season that didn't complete, they were slated to do best of 3, but we've never gone back to that idea. I wonder whether they might go back to it next year. Obviously, last year was a bit weird, and whether they just wanted to see what this year was like, sort of semi-post COVID, and maybe we will go back.
I'm just kind of interested. I understand why everybody gets 1 home game, and you don't risk having to blow a venue out for a game that might not take place. I get that. I understand that. But there comes a time whereby you've got to look past, you've got to look at the product. And you've got to look past just that type of thing, which might happen. And if the league's got to put a fund together with 500 quid from each team to deal with the situation of that happening to a club and then being financially out of pocket, then that's so be it, for the benefit of, the better product that you get. There's nothing better than two teams who've kicked crap out of kicked so-and-so out of each other for 2 games, then having to play a third game to finish. I mean, you'll remember the games in the 90s.
Yeah.
We had the last year of the Sporting Club in Newcastle, we had 6,000 people in Newcastle Arena to watch Danny Lewis
London.
tear my heart out.
Yeah. Remember it well.
You know, I think you might have had that on the telly. You know,
yeah, I was
tear
there.
my heart out with a 3. And Leon McGee is on the mic before the game saying, "Let's get ready to rumble." Absolutely not. But that was an event.
Yeah.
You know, that was a game 3. It was 2 teams who knew each other. It was there's a degree of coaching significance to it. The coaches have to test themselves. We all want to see what is, you know, the best of the best. We want to see people tested. And, you know, I just, you know, you look at Eurobasket, and I don't like, you know, they're doing best of 5s and best of 7s on it in some of the other countries. That's a bit much. We haven't got the fan base for it. But best of 3 cannot be too hard. Sorry, rant over. And I can't be accused of being partial at this because Eagles aren't even in it.
It's true. Well, Paul can't moan about not having how hard it is to sell tickets for that third game because
well, he's selling tickets within a week. Yeah, I mean, he's managed all right all year. How many get in there if they start winning?
Yeah. Right, so we'll wrap it up there. I'll just check they've not got back. Oh, they're back underway in Manchester. It's 36-45, 5-0 start to the Lions.
Can we do a commentator along?
We could do off Statcast. Yeah.
No, I'm finished. I'm done. I'm going to a cold dark room. Seriously, though, I mean, a heck of a regular season. But you know, my head is beginning to hurt. With just I don't know if it's the same with you. You commentate and you do the EuroLeague and all that stuff as well. But just the monotony, I'm afraid, of the last 2 or 3 weeks of game after game of similar BBL basketball with little jeopardy in relation to the games. Is beginning to wear on me. I think I'll hopefully be rejuvenated by next week for the playoffs. Hopefully we'll get some.
There's only 8 games to watch for next week. So as I say, we will probably be Monday night breakdown next week because of scheduling. But enjoy the playoff basketball, people out there. It should hopefully be pretty good. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Cheers.